Welcome back to App Stories. Today's show is brought to you by Notion. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hi, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
Doing really well. You know, we burned through a lot of wishes last week. You did really well. You got a lot of your wishes. I feel like the guy who's just like sitting here with like 2 wishes in my pocket, and you've got like a bag full that you're carrying around with you. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll do a little better today. You know, we still have a few OSs to go through.
Yes. So where do you want to start? Do we want to start from iOS?
Yeah, let's start with iOS because that's kind of a big one. And I kind of like the track record I'm seeing here for some of your wishes at the beginning, because there's a lot of no's in this list. But you had some very big ambitions for iOS 17, and unfortunately, you didn't really get any of them. I don't think.
I'm pretty sure I got like 1.
Yeah,
No.
I guess you.
You
got 2.
No,
you
3,
got 2
3.
now. I see.
I got 3, including one that I did not believe I would get. So 3. All right. So let me go through this list. So I wished for more widgets on the lock screen, like the number of widgets on the lock screen.
Right.
And no, you're still limited to a single row of widgets. Well, and I guess the tiny text one above the clock. But you cannot do multiple rows, and you cannot change still the flashlight and camera buttons at the bottom of the lock screen. So that's a no. I did get interactive widgets, including on the lock screen. So that's a yes, and that's part of like Apple's whole sort of interactivity based on app intents and SwiftUI this year. For example, even live activities can be interactive now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing interaction everywhere. And from a technical perspective, I think what Apple is doing is interesting. It's all based on app intents. So, and we'll talk about this later this summer and in my iOS review. But really, app intents, the framework, becoming this like centralized place for all kinds of these like modular interactions for apps. I think it's really fascinating.
Let me ask you this. Do you know yet whether it's possible with interactive widgets to use a text field to, like, I don't know, add a task or a quick note somewhere? I haven't seen that.
Well, no, you cannot bring up the system keyboard. So the only interactions
That's what I thought. Okay.
The only interactions you can do are SwiftUI buttons and SwiftUI toggles. So any type of button that you can design or a toggle, you can do, but you cannot bring up the Apple keyboard, like the software keyboard, to enter a task.
Right.
You can, for example, make a widget for a clipboard manager that captures the contents of your clipboard. That you could do. Or if you're James Thompson, you could design a widget that has a bunch of calculator, lots of buttons, and each one is a SwiftUI button, and that will work. Now, will Apple approve it? I don't know. You could make a widget that is like a large size widget on the iPhone, where the lower half of the widget is a fake keyboard. Like, you could do that. Will Apple approve it? I don't think they will, but you can try. So that's, you cannot bring up the official.
All right,
software
that makes sense. And I think creating your own fake keyboard with buttons is probably a pretty bad experience. I know they will, but
for sure.
I can't imagine that would be a very good experience. But, who knows?
I wish for multi-window on iOS and Stage Manager on iPhone. So that's how desperate I was at the time. I wish for a clipboard manager built into the system keyboard. We talked about this last time, and no, we did not get this. I also wished for a way to trigger shortcuts system-wide on iOS, like you can on macOS and on the iPad. And no, there's still no other way to. I mean, I guess you can still use back tap or some other accessibility feature like that. But no, you cannot do this. And I also wish for a natural language-based way to create shortcuts. Sort of like imagine ChatGPT, but for building shortcuts via natural language. And no, that's not a feature.
That's an interest. That was part of, I mean, that kind of ties in with the rumors we heard at one point about Vision OS having some sort of way to do automations with your voice. And we have not seen anything like that yet, but it'd be interesting to see if anything comes to that down the road.
So we're still at 1 yes for me. Let's see.
Yes.
In the music app department, I wished for a calendar of upcoming music releases. We didn't get this. However, this is interesting. You wrote about this, totally unrelated, but we will be able to subscribe to Apple's own radio shows in Apple Podcasts, which I think is finally. I mean, I don't want to listen to radio shows in the music app, even though I understand like they're made by the very DJs that, curate Apple Music content. I think having them in podcasts is a much better way to go about this.
Yeah, and it solves the calendar problem, because with podcasts, at least you can get notified when a new podcast show up. So you don't have to look at your calendar. You'll just see that a new one is there, and you can put it at the top of your queue.
Yeah. I also wish for a new music mix that is actually new. This is like unclear, TBD, I guess, because there's no way to know right now. And Apple usually rolls out these like intelligence-based improvements to Apple Music and the algorithm over time. So maybe in August, they'll come out and say, and we have a even more accurate playlists. But right now, it seems about the same to me.
You know what I think's going on there? I've been thinking about this and kind of paying attention to mine a little closer since we talked about this, which is, I think what the new music mix is doing is, say, that new Boy Genius album comes out. I don't remember when it came out. Say it came out on April 1st, 2023. What the new music mix is going to do is it's going to take the most popular songs from that album and spread them out over the next 3 or 4 weeks and give you one of them every single week in your new music mix, which, new, yes, newish. I mean, once you get a month into it, it's not so newish, because I've definitely noticed this with new releases, especially ones that I've added to my library, where every week I'll have a song from that album for a number of weeks in a row.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I wished for Safari reading list improvements like tagging, filters, saved searches, and a new user interface. But we got widgets, so we
we did. That's a new UI right there.
That's some the worst
new UI.
The worst part about these widgets?
What?
They default, at least so far in developer beta 2, they default to showing you unread items. The problem is that, so let's say you have a widget for reading list, and it's got article A, B, and C. You tap on article A, and it opens in Safari because the widget has 3 different touch targets. So article A opens in Safari. Mm-hmm. The problem is that when you go back to the home screen, you don't see article A anymore in the widget because it thinks that you've read the article.
Right, because you opened it, yeah.
Because you opened it. Right. So that's not ideal. And if it doesn't change, I don't think I'm going to use these widgets, because those articles should go away from the widget only if I manually delete the article from my reading list. Anyway.
Oh, that's too bad.
Podcasts, I did not get trim silence and voice boost, although I continue to think that Apple is going to do it, because it would be too bad, really, if they don't take this opportunity. They got the engine and resources to do it. But I did get, unbelievably so, a proper queuing system in the podcast app, which is so much better than what we used to have. And actually, I really like the new queue screen in Apple Podcasts that sort of incorporates both a real queue and a chapter switcher for episodes. The one thing I will say about the queue system, and I filed the feedback about this, is that I still think that a podcast queue should not behave like a music queue. What I mean is, right now, in Apple Podcasts, if you queue an episode, if you queue a bunch of episodes, and you're listening to App Stories, and you queue a bunch of episodes after it, in the new iOS 17 queue, at some point, maybe intentionally or accidentally, you tap on an episode in the queue. Mm-hmm. The App Stories one you're listening to at the moment goes away.
Yeah, I was going to mention this if you didn't, because this drives me a little bit bananas. Yep. I mean, you can go back, if you know what you've done, you can go back to the podcast and re-add it to your queue, which I've done a bunch, because sometimes really it's not even it's not an accidental thing. It may be I'm listening to a very long episode.
Exactly.
And some episode comes out that's very timely, and you want to just skip to the front of the line, right? And if you do that, you're not going to lose your place in the one you're already listening to, but you're going to lose it from the queue, which means you have to then re-add it. It's also interesting. You can add the same episode multiple times to the queue, which is very odd to me. I mean, I understand it more from a music standpoint, and I've actually done that where I tried it because I thought, oh, this is an episode that if this other one comes out really quickly, I'm going to skip it to the head of the line, but I don't want to lose the other one. So while I was thinking about it, I added it again to my queue. So there's a top tip for you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I really hope they change this one. But otherwise, I'm really liking podcasts. So that's why I filed my feedback. I filed, by the way, John, 13 feedback items so far in the beta season. But I know you've beat me here because you are up to 20 yourself. So good job.
This is the time to do it before the public betas come out, because I think there's a realistic chance that someone might see it and actually be able to act on it before the fall. I mean, after that, I concentrate more on just the major true bad bugs. But right now, it's a combination of here's some bugs I'm finding, but also here are some features that I want.
Some ideas,
Yeah, some ideas, which some of them are big, some of them are small. I think the small ones have a possibility of maybe getting implemented sometimes, but who knows? I mean, it's a very good time to be doing it. The other thing I would mention about that queuing system, Federico, is one resolution for this, if the Apple Podcast people are listening, is, you can reorder these items in your queue by using the drag handles on the right. But you can't reorder. You can't take the one that's currently playing and drag it down into the list. That would solve the problem right there.
Yeah. I wish for a passwords app, and I didn't get it. Apple continues to leave passwords in the settings app. But lastly, I saved the best for last. So reminders. I didn't get the ability to capture a task from a widget, even though I did get interactive widgets that allow you to check reminders off from the home screen. I'm already using this a bunch. I love it. But unbelievably so, we got a Kanban view, which Apple doesn't call Kanban, but we got a column view in reminders. And I still cannot believe they did this. You can now create sections in your reminders lists, and you can choose on the Mac, on the iPad, and even on the iPhone to view those sections as columns with a horizontally scrolling view. I cannot believe they've done this. It has to be one of my favorite features this year.
Oh yeah, no, it's really good. And I sent you one. I actually shared one with you. That was, I thought, this could be a way for us to kind of track specific projects. And we have one going on right now, which is our Summer OS preview series, which is a combination of stories and episodes of app stories. And so I set this up in sections with not started, research, writing, editing, and published, so that you and I could kind of track which pieces, all the story topics and where they are in the system between the ones that you, I, and Alex are going to be writing.
Yeah. And that's it for my list. I'm done.
All right. Well, I can't say that I did a whole lot better than you, Federico.
You didn't do much better, actually.
No, I was just looking through here. I was like, I really shouldn't be talking. I'm not one to talk here, but I wanted I had a lot of things that I wanted to get some attention that haven't had attention in a long time, like the Today View, like Control Center, and like the Share Sheet. And none of those things got updated at all. I'm really kind of surprised. I guess Share Sheet, maybe in a way, in that there are more ways to airdrop things now. I mean, I think Apple is maybe sort of pulling airdrop out of there, or at least expanding it so that you don't have to use the Share Sheet for it. But the problems that I mentioned on that episode are still there. And I feel like the Control Center really should be opened up to third parties. The Share Sheet really needs to be redesigned so it's less cluttered. And the Today View, I don't know. I mean, it's fine, I guess. It's just kind of there. I feel like it's almost like legacy UI, but Apple doesn't have anything to put there. So why not just leave it? And it's a way to have additional widgets. So that's cool, I guess. But I don't know.
At some point they're going to put widgets in the Share Sheet. Like, they're going to do it. They're putting widgets everywhere. I don't think it would be so shocking if a future redesign of the Share Sheet has some kind of widgets in there that allow you to capture information, something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing is, with the share sheet is so fragile, it seems like. Every beta season, the thing gets broken, and I feel like it's partly a memory constraint issue. And I'd hate to think what a widget would do to the share sheet, but maybe. All right, so in shortcuts, I was hoping for stability. The jury's still out on that, really. I mean, that's the kind of thing that tightens up during the course of the beta period, so I haven't really noticed it being particularly worse or better. I think it's faster, which is nice.
It is faster, and that's because of the new Spring-based animations that they're doing with Swift UI. So, but not that. See, it's one of those things. It's not like running the code faster. It's
a perception thing.
Well, it is. It is not like imaginary. The animations are faster, and as a result, your input on screen is accepted more quickly. But a complex shortcut like Apple Frames still takes a few seconds to run. It's just the UI is faster.
Yeah, no, that's true. I had hoped for things like UI elements that you could incorporate into shortcuts. We have not seen that, nor have we seen any better way to resolve conflicts between shortcuts or reusable code blocks. Those are all things that I think you and I have wished for one way or another over the last few years at least, and we don't have those yet. On music, I hoped for subscribing to playlists because that's really born of the fact that playlists get updated regularly. At least some of the bigger ones, the more popular ones, get almost weekly updates. And I wanted a way to kind of subscribe to those so I was aware of when something new came in. And while we didn't get that, we did get the radio thing that we talked about earlier, that radio shows can be brought into podcasts. They're doing that with Apple News Plus audio things too. And this is going to be my little mini thing for Apple News. I know a lot of people don't like Apple News. I actually am okay with Apple News. I don't like the ads. I think the ads are poorly implemented and gross. But
I noticed you've been using Apple News more and more lately because you send us like Apple News links.
I do once in a while. I do send Apple News links. And I just find it a good way to get an overview of a lot of major publications. And if you curate a good list of publications, you get some pretty good content. There are things about it that I don't like, but I do think that the content is pretty good. There's a lot of good publications in there. And when I've been on long car trips and have run out of podcasts to listen to, I listen to this long form writing in audio format. These are like articles from the New Yorker and other places, Bloomberg, things like that, on all kinds of different topics, news topics, tech topics, everything. And I think they will be right at home in podcasts because they're very much like a narrative. They're more like an audiobook, I suppose. But I think they'll work particularly well in podcasts because they're episodic and new ones will come in all the time. And it's kind of a nice way to jump around and maybe listen to some topics that you wouldn't have time to listen to. Because some of these, like I've been on long car trips, some of these articles can be like 40 minutes long at times. So they really work as like a full podcast episode that you're used to. So that's my pitch for audio in Apple News.
Have you noticed, have you seen that in iOS 17 you can now listen to any Safari article? Did you know? Yeah. So any article that has Safari Reader, you will find a new listen to this page button in Safari. And I'll give you another tip. While you're in Safari, you can also say, Siri, read this, and it will start reading the article for you.
Oh, nice. I didn't realize that. That's really cool. That's really cool. You know what? I wished for things in the phone app, and while I didn't get really a better bulk editing feature like I wanted, I got something that really takes care of the same problem in another way, which is the new visual voicemail that gives you text-based. The phone picks up, it goes to voicemail, and as someone's leaving you the voicemail, you see the text of it, so you can know whether to pick up or to ignore it and leave it and delete it later. That's a really nice feature, and I think it'll make dealing with junk calls a lot easier. Let's see. The last two things I had were a redesign of the App Store, which we did not get.
No.
And better surfacing of sensor data in home, which is a very specific thing, but I do have various temperature sensors and humidity sensors and things associated with my, thermostats and other sensors around the house. And they're kind of buried, and I find it a little hard to get to. And I wish that was surfaced a little better, so I got a sense for if it's too hot in one place or another. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Notion. Project management tools are supposed to help you move faster and stay organized. If you're still jumping between 50 tabs just to do your job, then maybe you haven't found the right tool yet. And nothing will slow you down like using the wrong tools to get things done. That's where Notion comes in. They've got some super exciting news. Notion has just launched Notion Projects. Notion Projects combines project management with your docs, your knowledge base, and AI, so you can stop jumping between tools and stop paying too much for them too. In just one workspace, you can do everything you need to do to get your projects over the finish line. From brainstorming to drafting launch plans to organizing sprints and keeping everyone on deadline. Notion is super customizable too. Everyone has preferences for how they like to view their projects, so you can view everything in whatever way works best for you, whether that's a timeline, table, or Kanban board. There's also powerful filtering and automation features, so you can work exactly the way you want. On top of that, Notion AI helps you automate all the tedious overhead, like summarizing meeting notes and finding the next steps, freeing you up to do deep work. I've been using Notion since the end of last year for a few things. One is it's how I organize our sponsorship schedule. Like this sponsorship spot, I've got a calendar view, a list view, and I can filter by whether it's Mac Stories, App Stories, or whatever it happens to be. It's a great way to track that sort of thing. But we also use it for our development project management because Alex, Federico, and I have been working on some new projects, and they're kind of sprawling. So it helps to have a place where each of us contribute what we're working on, where things stand, and everybody's up to date without having to have constant status calls to talk about that kind of thing. I've also used Notion AI a little bit to summarize some articles that I've seen online, just to get a broad sense for some longer form stuff in just a handful of paragraphs. Really, really helpful that way too. If you've got projects that you need to organize, Notion is for you. Check it out today because it really does offer everything you need from the very simple stuff all the way up to big projects. Do your most efficient work with Notion Projects. You can try it free today at notion.com/appstories. That's all lowercase letters, notion.com/appstories. When you use our link, you're supporting our show. Go right to notion.com/appstories today and check things out. Our thanks to Notion for their support of the show.
All right, so we should talk about watchOS, watchOS 10, and I think this is an interesting one. We didn't have a lot of wishes. We sort of knew coming into this that we would have a widget-inspired UI, and I want to talk about some of these design changes because design changes was one of my 3 wishes. But let me start from the other 2 first because it's pretty easy to get through these. I wish for plain English stats about health, and it doesn't seem like we've gotten any other type of summary or explanation in the health app about like data captured from the Apple Watch. Right. We talked about this. Understandably, Apple doesn't want to give you medical advice in terms of like the data it's capturing. It just wants to show you the data. But I still continue to think there should be a way to make this more human readable. Instead of saying your heart rate is 20% different, it's like, okay, but is that good or bad? I have no idea. And my other wish was to make shortcuts faster and more stable on the Apple Watch. It's too early to tell. Right now, I noticed that when you open the Shortcuts app, now and maybe this was the case before, but I think the UI is different. Like I get a bunch of app shortcuts on the watch as well. And there's a new page to by default in the Shortcuts app, you get your top 3 Apple Watch enabled shortcuts. And then there's a see all button that takes you into a list of all the other shortcuts that you have enabled for Apple Watch use. Mm-hmm. But in terms of interactions and speed, looks about the same to me. The other change So design changes. So I have the watchOS 10 beta on my Apple Watch Ultra, and Apple has essentially completely re-architectured sort of how you use the digital crown and the side button. So the Apple Watch Ultra action button has been left unchanged. So
right, probably the most disappointing thing. You can't customize it any more than you used to be able to.
So we're not going to talk about the Apple Watch Ultra action button. So on the watch face, so by the way, I'm going to count a yes for design changes. We did get design changes.
Yeah, we both kind of wished for this and talked about it together. So we ought to just kind of do that here too, I think.
So tell me if I'm getting this right. So you're on the watch face, you swipe down, you still get your notifications, and that's the same as before.
Right.
Now you swipe up or you rotate the digital crown and you get your widgets. And these are sort of these tiny cards that pop up from the bottom, and you can see like your reminders widget, your weather widget. You can pin certain widgets to the top of the list, and you can add widgets from what looks like an Apple Watch version of a widget gallery. So for example, I just added a now playing widget to my widgets page. I don't see it, but I guess at some point it will show up if I start playing something. So you press the digital crown and you go to the watch face, to the home screen. The honeycomb design has been tweaked, so it's like more zoomed in than before. It's kind of similar, but also it behaves differently.
I like it a lot better because it's more, you know what it is? It's instead of having this round honeycomb of icons where you're not sure whether you want to pan left, right, up, or down, it's a strip really. So you can use the crown and turn the crown and it will show you'll see everything. You won't have to go left or right for anything.
Yeah, I guess that's what it does.
I like it. I think it's better. It makes it easier to find that stuff.
Back on the watch face, and this is, I guess, the biggest change. If you press the side button, you get your control center. So control center, which used to be accessible by swiping up, now when you swipe up, you get your widgets. So you press the side button and you get control center. If you double click the side button, you still get Apple Pay. So control center now requires clicking the side button. But here's so far my biggest issue with this watchOS restructuring. And tell me if I'm losing my mind here or if there's an option that I haven't found. I was a pretty big user of the watchOS dock. And specifically, I used the dock not in recents mode, but in favorites mode. So I had a bunch of frequently used apps like Heart Rate, Shazam, Now Playing, right? I had all these favorites that I put in my dock. And that's how I clicked the button, opened the dock, and basically used it as a fast app switcher. In watchOS 10, you can get a dock-like UI by double-clicking the digital crown. However, this new dock is only for recents. It doesn't let you mark anything as a favorite. It's basically like an iPhone app switcher, and you go back in time in your recently used apps by scrolling or spinning the digital crown, but there's no dock for your favorites anymore. It's an app switcher.
Yeah, you can get rid of those. I mean, what you can do is you can swipe to the left and you can delete some of those recents if you want to get one out of there.
But I don't want, I just want my dock with the favorites.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, that's I think that of all the things that have changed, if someone is reliant on the dock and used it heavily like you did, this is going to really bug them. There's one other thing that's changed that I'll get to in a second that I think is going to bother a lot of people. But the dock is one of those. I've never really been a heavy dock user. I mostly interact with my watch passively, whether it's notifications or, starting something from a complication like a workout, that kind of thing. I've never really been a heavy user of going into the apps and doing stuff in the apps. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Apple did some research and found that there are probably maybe more people like me than you on that. I don't know. But it is a little bit more difficult now. I think that I would argue that they've made it somewhat better by the fact that the single press gives you your honeycomb or your list, and you can find your app fairly quickly and go into it that way from that avenue. And then if something's been opened recently, it should be near the top of your stack in your recents. But I get why you don't like it.
I think it's wild that they're getting rid of the dock, and I think it's a mistake, and I think this will bite them later in the summer. I think a lot of people will be upset that the Apple Watch no longer has a way to quickly launch your favorite apps. And I think like they used to have like a support document about using the dock. Like it was one of the key features of the watch experience. And I really do think it's a mistake to not have a dock for your favorites anymore. At the very least, make it configurable. Let me choose whether double-clicking the digital crown should give me an app switcher or a dock with my favorites. Done.
Right. Or, another thing that's disappeared that you don't have there's nothing tied to left and right swiping anymore. You can no longer switch between watch faces just by swiping. You have to press and hold on your face, and which is essentially that mode that lets you go into editing and then switch that way. And so I do kind of wonder what's going on with the left and right swipe, because that's a gesture that seems to be prime for some sort of action, whether that's, I don't know. I sort of assumed that we would get some sort of card UI that would use the left and right swiping to allow you to move between those cards, sort of how you would move between items in the dock, I suppose. But that's not possible either.
The last thing, that's a very weird. I just noticed that the swiping on the watch face doesn't work anymore. It's very weird. I will say the one thing that I like, that I really like about watchOS 10 design is the new app UI language. Like how apps, right now you can notice these changes in the first-party Apple apps. But basically, apps now have complications on the corners of the UI. And you can notice this, like a great example, I think, is the podcast app on the Apple Watch. Mm-hmm. When you open the podcast app, you have these controls in the corners of the display. So, for example, and I think the now playing screen in the podcast app is a great example of this. You get your podcast app work in the middle of the display, a large play button below it, and then in the four corners you get a close button, the time skipping controls for going backwards and forwards, and a more button to control playback, like on the iPhone or on the Apple Watch itself. And just feels like this new UI approach in putting these elements on the four corners of the Apple Watch display, sort of like complications on the watch face. I think it makes a lot of sense for apps, and it makes apps on the watch feel brand new and more functional.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I also I do like the this new card UI that you get from swiping up from the bottom. I haven't spent a lot of time playing with it. I want to really figure out what I want to pin there, because that is maybe. You
mean the widgets?
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry. The card-like widgets that remind me a lot of the Siri watch face. When you swipe up, I got to figure out which ones I want to pin there. I don't know if it's going to change my behavior with the Apple Watch yet. It's been too early for me to really dig into it. I still use it pretty passively, mostly for exercise tracking. So I guess we'll see.
Did you have anything else that you wished for in watchOS, John, that you want to mention?
I did wish for expanding the action button on the Ultra, which we didn't get. And I also was hoping that we would get some suggested plans for Fitness Plus, which, we got this more customization, but it's more user-controlled customization. And that's going to be on wherever you find Fitness Plus. You'll be able to do things like stacks, which are multiple workouts that you can stack together when you want to do them all at the same time. And you can create yourself calendar-based plans. So you might say, I want to do a HIIT workout on Mondays and a jogging workout on Wednesdays and something else on Friday, that kind of thing. And it'll then, those will be available to you very easily on those days of the week, which I think is a good way to do it, because Fitness Plus, there's a lot of content in there now, and without some way of organizing it based on your needs, whether that's calendar based or the things you normally do together, it can be a little hard navigating those many workouts. So I think it's a good addition. So we'll see how that works out in practice, though. I haven't tried one of those yet.
All right. So lastly, let's move on to tvOS. Do you want to go first, John?
Yes.
What did you wish for in tvOS?
All right. So I was hoping for some sort of UI change to the homepage, not the TV app interface, but the actual homepage with all the apps on it, so that it would allow me to kind of declutter it without a lot of work on my part. Did not get that. I also was hoping for more of a manual queuing system of my own. Didn't get that really. I mean, you can, the existing stuff that was there is still there, and it's fine, but I was hoping for a little bit more there. And then finally, I thought that Apple should do more with music on the Apple TV, and we didn't really get anything there in terms of concerts or the music channel that's baked into the TV app. But we did get some very surprising stuff. Did you have any? I guess I should let you talk about your 3 things that you had first too.
Well, I sort of got one of them. I wish for a floating panel UI for song lyrics, which I didn't get. I wished for a quad box feature, but for watching not just sports, but like all kinds of video in a quad box, which I didn't get. And I wish for HomeKit hub improvements, which I guess we did get one thing, which is the ability to control I wish for what's the change in HomeKit for light color control? It's not what I wished for. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you wanted to be able to dim your lights and things like that.
No, I wanted to be able to control my gradient.
Oh, the gradient.
Lights.
That's what it was. Yeah.
But we didn't get gradients. There are some changes to light-based control in HomeKit, but it's not what I wanted. So I literally got 0 out of 3 in tvOS.
Yeah, same here. But we did get a fair amount of stuff. I think the most surprising thing is that tvOS was part of the keynote in WWDC, right? So it got some time there, and that's, I think, largely because one of the big messages at WWDC this year was video calling in particular on all platforms, but tvOS has FaceTime calling, and it uses the continuity camera, where you can set up your iPhone horizontally, in front of your television and sit on your couch and do a FaceTime call with somebody, which I didn't see that coming. I don't know about you.
I didn't see this coming at all. And I think the continuity camera stuff is going to be really nice to have on tvOS. And I don't know, I'm very excited about having native VPN support.
Yeah, that's another very surprising one.
I am so happy this is finally happening, because for the past 15 years or so, I've been watching TV shows from the US with my girlfriend by airplaying from an iPhone to the Apple TV, because the Apple TV didn't have a VPN. So it used to be HBO, then it became HBO Max. Now it's called Max. I pay for Max and I pay for Hulu. And at some point I was paying for Showtime. Like, I've tried them all, stuff that we get months later in Italy. And I don't want to wait months. I want to be part of the cultural zeitgeist now, John, as always.
Like, of course you do.
I got to be in the moment. And but for the past decade plus, I've been enabling the VPN on my phone and starting the playback from the iPhone apps for those streaming services, and then airplaying the result to the Apple TV. And with tvOS 17, I'll just be able to install, I'm guessing, ExpressVPN, for example. I will be able to install that on my Apple TV and watch my TV shows without having to airplay anything. So that is like a single quality of life enhancement that has me really excited for tvOS, which is not something I thought I would ever say this year.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. And I guess the other thing about continuity camera that I neglected to mention is that it integrates with Apple Music Sing too, which is the karaoke style app that they've got available, or feature that they've got available on the Apple TV, so that you can see yourself while you're singing and going along with the lyrics. We're going to get Find My for the Apple TV remote. And Control Center has been redesigned. So it's essentially like a tab bar at the top where you scroll left to right through different categories, and a little pop-up comes down below that shows you what your various options are for things like profiles and home and other categories, which is, I think, a big improvement over kind of having a long strip down the side of your TV. That should be a nice enhancement. There's a new enhanced dialogue feature that's coming too, which will boost the dialogue in TV shows and movies automatically, but it's going to be limited only to the new HomePods, which is kind of disappointing. I suppose that's probably a chip processing issue, but it's only available on those. And then Dolby Vision 8.1 is coming too for those people who are into Dolby Vision 8.1.
So all this to say, we did very badly with our tvOS wishes. But we got a bunch of cool stuff that we were not expecting. So I guess the takeaway, now that we have graded our wishes, I think the takeaway is, as always, we should shoot for bold ideas. Because sometimes you get those. Like, for example, a Kanban board in reminders. And I should have said a VPN on tvOS. So next year, I think this year I wasn't thinking big enough. I'm going to go bigger next year with these wishes.
All right. That sounds good. I think we went pretty big as it was, which is why we have an awful lot of no's on these lists. But until you wish it, it can't come true. So we got to keep trying. Keep trying.
Yeah.
All right, Federico, I want to thank our sponsor again for this episode. That's Notion. You can find the two of us over at macstories.net. Federico and I are both on Mastodon. Just go to fetici.macstories.net or johnvorhees.macstories.net to follow us on Mastodon. And we're on Instagram, where Federico is at Fetici. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.